and welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your hosts, Daniel
And Daniel,
and not Bryce this week.
which is weird because
Is
Bryce is
this?
going to be next week.
Yes, yeah, I was going to ask you that clarification. Are we filming before the week? Yeah, before.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
going to have a special guest next week. Next episode, it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a little weird, though. You'll see what we mean when you listen to it. We had to do some editing here and there, but that's fine.
Yeah, and finagling. And again, we've talked about this before. And we're pulling back the curtains again. We record out of order. So tonight's episode, what we're recording now, is going to go up this week, whereas next week we already recorded last week. So
Yeah,
have fun with that.
yeah, yeah. Thank goodness it's not chronologically based, because then it would just be
Yeah,
it would
yeah.
be just like the worst time traveling show ever. Nobody would know what's going on. That's
So
fine.
again, just to
This
let every
episode is very.
go ahead. I was just going to let everybody know we have a special guest next week. It was supposed to be his introduction. Then there was some issues with when we were going to record it. Luckily enough, we have a mutual friend. We've talked about him on the show before, Bryce. He's luckily agreed to be a third guest host, or a third host, as you will, whenever we need someone to fill in for one of the Daniels. Just in case you get stuck at work or I have a medical procedure like this coming soon. I have to get a root canal. Yay, me. Uh,
Fun.
yeah. So he's
I'll take
agreed
a second
to.
work.
No, you won't.
Compared to that, I would gladly be stuck at work.
Oh yeah, no, you can have fun at work. I wouldn't recommend a root canal on anybody, and I've never had one before.
Mhm. Yep. I've never have either, so I can only imagine it's all fun and giggles.
Yeah. So luckily enough, next week you'll get to hear Bryce. It's his introduction, and again, we would like to thank him for stepping up and helping us out.
That's right. Yeah, so thank you so much for Bryce for you'll enjoy the episode, I'm sure. I haven't listened to it yet, but I imagine like he's a great host and he's gonna be fun to especially when we have the trio episodes. I'm looking forward to those a lot.
Yeah. So am I. I'm looking forward to it. We have such a good chemistry. If our road trip tells us anything about that,
That's right. So should we talk about our road trip then?
yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, we're not on Twitch right
Yeah.
now because we're having streaming issues, so
Yeah.
we got time.
Yeah, we got time. That's right. So let's talk about this road trip that we took. We used to do this a lot more often, and
Hmm.
now that Daniel and I are both vaccinated, as well as our other friends who joined us, we decided it was now finally time to trade in a heap of games to a bookstore that's a state over, and we used to do this quite often, and
Hmm.
now we had so many games piled up
Piled up,
like
yeah.
that, we were ready to go. I think my final count was roughly about 60 games
Mine was
that I
close to 20 or so.
Yep, 20 or so. And then I think Bryce traded in about 20 as
Yeah.
well as our friend.
Speaking of which, I looked at Bryce's TikTok when he was talking about it. Someone was asking it. I think estimation was anywhere between 100 to 120 games was traded in that weekend.
Yep. Yep. That's how many we got rid of. I came back with I counted 15 new games. Well, not new necessarily new games. 15 games, two expansions, and that was it. And a deck of cards.
I came back with 7 games and 3 expansions, 2 that I bought outright from a game store while we were up there.
Yeah. Well, I found out that 5 of my games that I traded in for brand new, non-punched, brand new. I loved it. I was excited.
I have one that was unpunched. All the others are punched, and thank God because Agricola. I mean, all Agricola was there. Star Trek Panic all was there. Blood Rage was not all there. The only thing I'm missing is one little blue ring for the character. Everything else is there, like all the minis and stuff like that. I'm just missing one of the little clip rings. I'm like, oh well, $60 game. And I'm missing a ring. Sure,
Yeah, we'll take it. Absolutely.
but
I
then
haven't checked.
Gen 7 unpunched.
Brand new, huh?
Yeah,
Someone probably bought that and then
read the
decided,
rules and I
well,
was like, nope.
Yep. Heard some bad reviews. Let's just get rid of it.
All the
I wanted
cards
to
are still shrinked, and the punch boards are still shrinked.
That's right. I want to share this with you real quick for our visual watchers. Watch this on YouTube. I got this Turn in Taxis expansion. Do you remember how much I had to pay for this?
50, I think, right?
55, right? It's out of print. I get it. I totally get it.
And
but I want to
imported.
show you. And imported. That's right. So, I mean, well, this is the American printing of it. But so inside you have the rule sheet, right? You know, as you'd expect. And you have a board. So this, I think, replaces the current board with some added spaces. That's not the problem. This is the rest of the components. If you can see right here, this entire box is just a small stack of cards, some tokens, and then a piece.
Well, they got to put the board somewhere.
I know. The box size justifies it because of the board. But when I opened it, I had a little bit of, like, concern. Just for a brief moment going, not sure about the pricing on this, but, you know.
Well, it's not a print, so there's that. I was glad I was able to pick up Star Trek Panic for $30.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a great deal.
Quite happy. Well, I got an unpunched Gen 7 for $30. So I can't complain all that much. I spent more for one of my expansions at the game store than I did for Gen 7.
That's right. I spent almost, I mean, I didn't spend any money on the other games. I spent a little bit because I went over my limit a little bit, but most of them, and on all 17 other games, I spent more on 2 games than I did on those 17 others. So I'll take it. So we don't have much to talk about as far as what we've played lately, but we went on a day trip, did some trading, got some cool games, and now we have a whole backlog of games on our shelves of shame that we're going to be getting to the table and telling you guys about later on.
Only one game that I bought goes on my shelf of shame. Everything else I've played.
Okay. I'll give you that. I have a lot more games on my shelf of shame.
Gen 7 is the only one that goes on my shelf of shame.
So when are we playing it?
I don't know. I got to read the rules, and there's a lot going on in there because there's like envelopes that you got to open, and I'm like, oh boy, is this a legacy? Is this campaign? I didn't go too thorough on it. I just saw that it's the follow-up Crossroad games. I've wanted to try it, and I had store credit, so I picked it up. That's
right. Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm excited to try it. I think now that Dead of Winter is kind of chilled for everybody, now that it's kind of cooled for everybody, I think that it'll be worth it to try something that's in the same vein but different. It doesn't have like those shoulders to step on, you know.
Well, the only thing is that their newest one, that's also a Crossroad Games, from my understanding, Forgotten Waters, blows both of those out of the water apparently. That's like Dead of Winter is still really good. Gen 7 just sinks to the bottom because how good Forgotten Waters is.
Yep. I'm curious to see it.
So am I. I'm thinking about picking it up.
You should. So I can. All right. Let's get into the top 8 debate time. This is our episode that we wanted to bring to you. We've had this on plan for a couple weeks now, and we're finally able to film it.
Yeah.
We're excited. So top 8 debate time. This is a very weird list. It's the top 8. Yes, that's part of the episode. Communication limits.
Oh, dear God. You got to stop doing that. We've already had enough computer problems. I'm sitting here like trying to figure out what's going on. Quit being a jerk.
I knew that was throwing you off. I'm sorry. It's communication limits. And for those of you audio listeners that just was wondering what was going on there for a minute, I was just mouthing the words that I was trying to say just to freak Daniel out. It was so worth it. I apologize in advance.
Yeah, I'm going to just cut all that out, and then you're just going to look like a jackass.
Just put it in there. It's worth it. It's worth it. It makes sense.
At least the audio listeners won't have to look at me looking confusing at all the little buttons going on over here. Like, why, what's not recording?
This is so enjoyable about it. But what does communication limits mean, though? Why don't you explain it to our listeners?
So, Board Game Geek defines communication limits as games that may limit players from communicating with one another openly. These restrictions can be absolute as they relate to certain specific pieces of information, or they may restrict certain types of communications, such as speaking.
That's right. So I've always considered this, if the game limits the way you can communicate as part of a mechanism of the game, then I appreciate that a lot. And I think all of our examples, with the exception of just like one or two, uh, I think only like there's only a couple that I don't necessarily consider as much communication limitation, just because they kind of tell you, oh, you can't just directly tell people what you have in your hand. But there will be times, there's certain games that I feel like, oh, you just can't tell people what you have. But if you like, if you if you do this, I can definitely take care of that. It's like, well, come on, like you're kind of,
Yeah.
it's just how are you saying it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. There's a couple on this list that I'm looking at. I'm like, there's only one, maybe two that I have issues being in the top 8 debate, but there is communication limits, and by the definition, it basically just says you can't speak. The main one on our list that I have issue with, we'll get into like halfway in, if not a little further.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. There's one specifically that I think is neat, but my top three honorable mentions all approach communication limitation in a different way. So I'm sure you probably will be able to guess what one of mine is, but we'll talk about that when
Well,
we get to it.
you probably know what my three are, just because honestly, I'm surprised. I've only played about 11 communication limit games out there.
I just have to look through the list and go, oh, okay, you put that one, you put that one. I can only I know one of them. We'll talk about that. So our top 8 debate this time, our number one seed is a game that I know you're a big fan of, The Crew.
And it will be going up against our 8 seed, the Grizzled.
Battle of the Thus.
The Thus.
The
Not only
Thus.
battle the Thus, it's the battle of the card games.
Yeah, Battle of the Card Games. That's right. Our number 2 seed, Codenames.
Going up against our number 7 seed, Shadows over Camelot.
Our number 3 seed, Decrypto.
Going against our number 6 seed, Hanabi.
And our number 4 seed, Just One.
Going up against our number 5 seed, Mysterium. And that one hurts a lot.
That's tough. Yeah. There's some great games on these. I never realized how good communication limitation really is. It's fun.
Though I have an issue with what games they consider communication limits. So on a spoiler alert, it's not on my honorable mentions because we agreed top 8 debate, it doesn't get talked about. But Gloomhaven was number 1 on that list, and I get it because you can't really talk about what's in your hand with the other players out there. But yeah, I see so many other things on that communication limits.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you took any game that's card based where you have a hand of cards and you're not supposed to directly tell people what you have, that's technically all communication limits, but that's not the intent of it. The point
Here's
of that,
my thing with it is with Gloomhaven. Yeah. When I say Gloomhaven, out of all the mechanisms that you could talk about that's in that game, communication limits is not the one that's going to pop in your head at all. It'd probably be like the 10th or 11th thing you think about.
Oh, I'd forget about it, honestly, because the only reason they have it in the game in the first place is to prevent quarterbacking and to prevent one person. Oh, well, you have this card, play this, you play that, you play this, and then I'll play this, and then we'll win. Now, thanks to me. You know, that's the attempt at that. And there are a lot of cooperative games on our list, but they use communication limits in a very different way. I do disagree with that. Gloomhaven would have technically been on our list if we didn't disqualify it.
And it wasn't a choice for us disqualifying. If you're past listeners or new listeners for that matter, Gloomhaven won our first year overall, so it is now banned from all lists. This way we don't have to keep arguing it.
That's right. So, but what about you, the viewers? What did you think is good for communication lists?
You're starting from the bottom again, aren't you?
started from the bottom, and now we're here. Uh, our lowest ranked, lowest voted for, no, with only one vote, Fox in the Forest Duet.
Interesting.
I love this game.
I do enjoy Fox in the Forest Duet. That's the co-op version of it, not the original Fox in the Forest. Correct?
That's right. It's the cooperative version. Cooperative trick taking for 2 players. Little weird,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I've only played it the one time when you and me both played it at what is it, Game Vault in El Paso. Had a good time playing it. Really enjoyed it. But I have to say, there is limitations. But honestly, we're going to argue the same thing with the crew too. But that's the point of a trick-taking game. You're supposed to want a limit. I mean, when you're playing, what is that one? Was it Hearts or Spades, where you're playing in teams and you're trying to bet how much you have? That's limited communication as well. So
yeah, exactly. It's just like any other card game. Yeah, I don't disagree. It does make sense that it's on here because you can't really talk about what you're doing because and the cooperative nature helps allude to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I get why it wasn't as voted as much. It's a fantastic game though.
Great game. Great game. Like, if we were talking about trick-taking games, this would be high on my list if it didn't make the top 8. Yeah. There's one lower than it. I don't know if yours is a little switch different than mine, but that is the Lost Expedition added by Lenny.
Okay, yeah, that mine just doesn't even show who adds what.
Oh, okay.
The next one with 2 votes is Magic Maze. Daniel, have you played this one yet?
Which one is Magic Maze?
So Magic Maze, right here. Magic Maze is a game where you have tiles being laid out, and you're trying to get certain spots from point A to point B, and you have to like make stops from time to time in between it. It has communication limitation in the fact that you are just not allowed to talk at all.
Yeah.
But anybody can move their pieces or any piece on the board in one of the 1 or 2 ways that they are allowed to do it. So you might have like only you can move like the blue pawn to an exit or something like that. And I might be able to only move pawns in south. And only when I can do it can I move those pieces over there. So you might move your piece north, wanting me to move it farther or to the west, and because that's my ability, and you can't tell me that. I have to just know it. They have one way that they can communicate, and that's this big pawn that you can put in front of people, and you can like slam it in front of them, just like, you need to move, you need to do something, and then you have to wait for them to figure out what they need to do.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. It works really well, but high stress players, I don't suggest it, but I enjoy it a lot. I love that.
So I do remember it. I have played it. I played it at Dice Tower West in 2019. So it's been a couple years. Played it the one time. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite thing in the world. Again, I'm not a huge fan of stressful games.
Yeah, and that absolutely is a stressful game. 100%.
Oh, yeah. We got one on our list that stresses me out, that there was a running gag when we were playing that if you said the name, I got the chills.
I don't remember which one that is, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know.
All right. So the next game on our list is Sean added The Game.
Yeah.
Also known as The Game on Fire. There's also a new one out. What is it? The Game.
Quick and easy.
Yeah. Phenomenal game. I'll talk about it a little later.
Yeah. We'll skip it for now. I thought you would. The next one that was added to this list is The Mind, which is literally the game of communication limitation. Also a fun game. I know you don't like it, and I get the arguments for it, but we'll be talking about that a little bit later as well.
I knew that was going to be on your list.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's move on. These are all ones I've added. So, yep, that's it.
Cool. So let's talk about some of the comments that our viewers added on. Do you want to take it away?
Yes, we're going to go ahead and start with Kristen here. And she says, I think the crew is simply fantastic because it turned an extremely competitive genre into a collaboration. And that's my big thing why I like the crew so much. And in fact, I talked about it, you'll hear a little bit about it next week episode on Big Bang for Your Buck when it comes to the crew, because it really did turn one of my favorite genres of trick-taking game and make it a collaborative effort So good.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny said another version of spelling it, represent. Danny says Dixit is probably my all-time favorite for this, and then Mysterium, even though I've only played that once on Steam.
I don't disagree with her when it comes to Mysterium, because Mysterium turned Dixit into a really good game.
Right. And that's my opinion too, but you can't argue with what Dixit did for the hobby. It
Oh
was a
no,
game.
yeah.
I
Dixit
don't like it.
spawned a lot of games. It also gave us Mysterium, which was a pseudo successor to Dixit, which also had a pseudo successor in Obscurio, which is also another phenomenal game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I appreciate Dixit for what it is. I just don't like the game. That's
I
all it is.
enjoy the game. Dixit to me is kind of like a lot of the other games when I first got into the hobby. I played like Munchkin for that matter. I played a mess of it in the beginning of the hobby, and I haven't touched it since.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Couldn't agree more.
Franco says, shouldn't something like Teach You make this list, or is the limitation of communication not so much a central mechanism in it so as to qualify here? And I just went ahead and just commented on this one because I've never played Teach You, and I let him know I'm not familiar how it plays, so I'm not sure. If you want to add it, go knock yourself out.
Yeah. I have played Teach or I haven't played Teach You. I'm very familiar with it and I do own it. But Teach You is a trick taking game. And it's a
Okay.
very, very competitive trick taking game. Up there to like the likes of Bridge, Spades, all of those. It is very, very competitive. What makes it
Okay.
different is you have like little dragon cards that have special abilities. And there's small abilities. Like one is it copies the number that was previously played, but adds a half to it. So it beats that previous number. But anything else can still beat those. There are ones that's like a wild number, one that is a zero, like stuff like that. There's like weird little tricks that are added onto it, and it makes it really interesting. But it's the same, and I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into my list because that ties into it. My number three is the mind, and so what I found and what I heard was a really meaningful comment of the mind is literally you're playing cards in order as a group. And I've heard of like all these ways to cheat in the mind where you all just kind of count or look at a clock. It's like that then why are you even playing it at that point? But the idea is that there is no communication whatsoever. You can't say anything. You can't like signal each other. You can't do anything specific to signal when somebody should play a card. What people who play bridge to that level of quality would find the game like the mind intriguing because bridge has all this whole sub layers of communication based on what I lead with should determine like based on like the first card I play and you knowing what's in your hand, if you're that level of bridge player, you would know how many tricks you get by that one card. It's intense. It's amazing. And I love that level of degree. And I've seen bridge players play the mind and then perfect it and then get to the point where everybody's playing it and then they solve it and then they never have to play it again because they've already solved it. You see what I mean? That's why I think something like Teach You, I totally understand because it is that level. If I lead with a 6, that's going to tell you something completely different than if I lead with a 5. It's intriguing.
Sure.
The
If you
mind
say
makes
so.
that mechanism. Yeah, the Bridge and Teach You, they have that as a sub category. I get why he's saying that, and I do agree with him. I would totally be fine with it being on the list. I just think the mind having that be the whole core of the game is why it's on my list. That's my
Okay.
number three.
Well,
Honorable mention.
all right. We'll go into my number three honorable mention, and it's nothing like the mind. It's actually
Nope.
good. And this one is Letter Jam. And so I really enjoy Letter Jam. You showed it to me the first time we played it. It's a really fun spelling game. I liken it to a lot like Hanami meets Scrabble, where you're trying to spell a word, but you don't know what letter is in front of you. Everybody else does. And so you're working as a group, and someone will say, I can use 5 of the letters at the table. If you, I don't know how many does it hold, 6 or 7?
I think 6 players.
So yeah, if you're playing a full contingent, I'm like, I could use 5 of the letters. You're trying to clue in all your teammates how to use their letters. and who's got what. And so I really, really enjoy that. Uh, a lot of clue giving, trying to be the not the best speller, but just trying to clue into what everybody's word is. It's a lot of fun with very limited communication. I'd rather have this on the list than some of the other games that we have on this list.
Yeah, I don't blame you. My number 2 is a game that we have not talked about in like years. It's Letter Jam. And no, I 100% agree with what you're saying. And what makes it even better is the fact that since it's cooperative and you're all trying to like there could be one person who's amazing at spelling and coming up with these amazing words, but that doesn't mean you're helping the group if they're coming up with all the words. They have no idea what they have in front of them.
Yeah.
So it incorporates that interactivity, saying it's like, look, I get you're amazing at it, and you can come up with a 7-letter word, and we'll probably all figure out our letters. What about you, though? We need to figure out yours.
Your letter, yeah.
Yeah, because if we don't start doing that, that's gonna be rough. And then so of course you start thinking, well, let's just do the easy route. Let's finagle it and let's just do like 3-letter words. Do you know how many 3-letter words there are? Way more than there are 7-letter words. I'll tell you that. And you don't realize that until you're in the midst of it. It's like that's why like you kind of bid yourself. It's like, oh, I can make a word using like 16 of these letters. There's only 6 out, but I have like 16. Like I'm gonna spell elephant. And you wait. You're gonna know exactly what letter you have in front of you. It's amazing. The only thing that I don't like about this game, and it happens almost every time we played it, is there is a point where 2 players they're both saying, "Oh, I can make a 6-letter word." Well, so can I. And then they just can't. Like, how do you decide at that point?
Yeah.
Who takes it? And everybody kind of works together. It's like, well, you know less of your letter, so why don't you take it to clue them?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It has that kind of issue. It lends itself to a lot of that like tabletop quarterbacking that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It has some of that issue, but oh man, it's a phenomenal game.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my number 2, Letter Jam.
All right, moving on to my number 2, and going along the lines that you were talking about, like the mine with the limited communication and trying to play your numbers out. My game is a Spiel des Jahres nomination. It didn't win, did it? And that is the game.
The game did not win.
Yeah. And it was what did it go up against? I can't remember.
I think it went up against Codenames. It was
it might have been, yeah. I think it's a phenomenal game. You're playing out a deck of cards, which just numbers on it. You're either trying to put them in 2 stacks of descending numbers and 2 stacks of ascending numbers. You can't go back up to, so like if you have an 85 and you drop all the way to 65, you can't go back up into the 80. So you got to figure out where you're going to put those cards. There is some ways you can do it by playing 10 exactly above the number. So like if I play a 75 or a 64 and then someone puts it up to 74, then we have the numbers back where we need them, maybe. But the thing is, you got to play 2 cards every turn. So one of those stacks is just going to get ruined one way or another. And the most communication you get really in there is don't play in that stack. Do whatever you do not play in that stack. Well, guess what? I got 2 cards I got to play, and it's one of them's got to go in that stack. So,
yeah.
And it's just like, it's a really good game. It leads to a lot of laughs, a lot of good times. I prefer the target cards, the ones that you can get target in the game, that rather than the other one, like the version you have, the Game on Fire. It's just numbers. Why does it got to be death metal in all seriousness?
Yeah,
as someone who listens to death metal at one point in time, I don't see why a card game needs to be all death metal. And honestly, the big thing about the game, it's a great little card game that works with non-gamers. I showed this game to friends of ours. They really enjoyed it. And then they showed it to their parents, and they had a good time playing with their parents with this game, who their parents are not gamers at all, and they enjoyed playing this game once they figured it out. And so that's why it had to go on my list. So number 2, the game.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't put it on my list because I knew you would, and I couldn't agree more on it. Daniel, have you played the game Quick and Easy yet?
No, I have not.
Then that'll replace the game for you.
Really?
I'm at that point. I wholeheartedly agree. Everything it fixes Done. It makes it that much better. It's brilliant.
I'll have to try that then.
My number one is a bigger box, like a big box game, cooperative, designed in part by Rob Davio. The plot thickens. Do you have any idea which one I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
It's Cthulhu themed. Yeah, even more confusing, right?
Well, the
And
only
that
one I
is
could think of. Oh, Mountains of Madness. I was gonna say Cthulhu Death May Die.
Mountains of Madness. And I'll tell you why this is my number one honorable mention. Because it does communication limitation in two very different ways at the game. You have the core game where you have to figure out a tile, and in order to succeed at the mission, you have to be able to play certain cards. Well, you don't know how high or low the numbers are. So, like for example, between the group, we might need for the tools, we might need anywhere from 6 to 8. And as a group, we have to somehow discuss to figure out how can we as a group play 6 to 8 of the tools. Here's the catch to it. If you get all those, then you succeed in that section and you go on. Otherwise, you get penalties. The penalties are going slowly more insane. And those insanity cards cause you to be restricted in what you can say even more so. And you have to act like it's not happening. It doesn't make any sense. But you have to act like whatever you're doing is normal. So, for example, one person might get an insanity card that says you can only ask questions. You can't say statements. One person might say you have to play from the corner of the room. One person or one person might not be able to say any numbers, and you have to kind of describe the numbers. Like, it's so ridiculous.
I remember playing this and I couldn't use my thumb. The thing, I think the card said like your dominant hand thumb, you can't use it. So I had to like hold my cards all Vulcan grip and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
just be like, "What? Nothing's going on here."
Yeah, and you have to play it off like that's not happening because only you're the one who's noticing. And so not only are you stuck with this weird puzzle of trying to figure out, all right, guys, like who can handle the tools? Oh, I can do it by myself. We're good. But if I can't say that, it's like, is there anybody else who can handle them by themselves? Question. If there's not, should I play cards? Like it's so brilliant how it works.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, so I can't disagree with you on this. To the point, I didn't put it on my list because I knew it was going to be on yours.
Yeah, it's a brilliant game. It's absolutely brilliant, and that's my number one honorable mention.
I have to say, Mountains of Madness has to be your favorite Cthulhu themed game, isn't it?
Ooh,
Other than maybe Elder Sign?
it's up there. It's up there. Wow. Maybe we should do a debate. That should be a top 8 debate, Cthulhu themed. I bet there's a list.
There might be. Oh boy, there's a lot of games on there. I'm gonna have to show you Arkham Horror LCG. This way you can at least put that
So
on your list finally.
That sounds good. We'll trade for it. I'll look into that for now. That's an idea for a list. We need to write that down. All right. What is your number one?
My number one is probably one of my favorite party games.
Time's up.
You got it in one.
Yep.
I really do enjoy this. You're trying to give clues to your teammates without saying the words on the cards, and that's just the first round. You can't skip the card. You just got to say, if it's say, I'll just go with the one I use all the time. The thing it says Hodor. You're going Game of Thrones, hold the door, whatever you got to do. You just can't say the word itself, and your partner's got to guess it. And so you're giving these clues. You can't skip anything, but you got to be careful how you give these clues because everybody around the table is paying attention. So if that card comes up again, they give that clue. And so I have a great time with this game. And then in the second round, you give one word answers. You can skip this time, but it can only be one word clues, which a couple of the games on our list are one word clue games. And then in the third round, you have to pantomime it. So it's starting to limit the communications lower and lower and lower as you're going through this game. It's a phenomenal game. I really have a great time with it. I wish they still came out with more relevant cards for like the younger generations to really play with it. I think the most relevant one is when they added Game of Thrones to the deck, Total Title Recall or whatever it's called now. Giving those more recent cards, if they just come out with an expansion deck every few years, this game would be a timeless classic along the lines of everybody knows Trivial Pursuit. I wish everybody would know Time's Up if they'd kept feeding it like they do Trivial Pursuit. Again, it's another one of those games, just like the game, where you can play with gamers and non-gamers alike, and everybody's still having fun with it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Good pick. So that is our honorable mentions. Daniel, it is time for the debate. Let's talk about how these debates work. First off, we go on Board Game Geek and we pick a category, designer, mechanism, anything along those lines. In this example, it's a mechanism. And we rank it from the highest ranked to the lowest ranked. Then we'll pick the top games that are on that list that Daniel and I have both played. Why does it matter that we both play it?
This way we can make a sound argument for those games instead of a lot of it being, I guess you're right. I've never played this, so I'm just going to have to take your judgment on it. That's boring. They want to see us punch each other. That's why we got to record it in 2 separate rooms, in 2 separate houses, about 10 miles apart.
Right, exactly. Because that's about the distance we found that we can limit our punches. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's why we have to do this. And then so we have to make a solid argument for each game, because on top of that, we debate each round and we talk about the pros and cons of each of the games based on a random drawn out of the hat or out of the cup of doom now.
And we decide who chooses that game based on the coin of doom.
That's right, the coin of doom, flipped every time. So we're going to get into this. Before we do that, we also rank it on 5 different criteria. The first one is ease of play. Ease of play determines on how likely it'll get to the table, how easy and familiar the rules are, and how likely will it cause what we call analysis paralysis, which means are you flooded with options or such strict movements where you just freeze up and you slow down the game? That's a good idea for ease of play.
The other criteria that we have here is replay value, the length of time and the scaling of the game. Does a 2-player game play as well as a 4-player game? And does it add a lot more time to the game if you're adding a lot more players to the game? As well as the minimum number of plays to get the full experience of the game. That means if you play the game once, let's say chess, you might not be great at it, but you know how to play chess. Now, you learned how to every piece moves. That's all you need to know. You know the entire game of chess. Or you're going to play a campaign game like Gloomhaven, which we mentioned before, where there's 100 scenarios in the box, and you might not see it all. As well as expandability. Is there already an existing expansion? Up to 1 possible future expansion if we have a belief that something's coming out. Or the biggest one we always use is space-based. There's a Shy Pluto, or there's a volume 1. We're expecting there to be a volume 2, so we're giving it an additional expansion. Or if they have been confirmed by the designer or the publisher.
That's right. And then the next one is meaningful choices. How likely does the game allude to your ability to strategize for the rest of the game? How well can you affect other players through smart choices and determining, are you playing multiplayer solitaire, as we like to call it? And then finally, in meaningful choices, is what is the odds that you will be making arbitrary choices throughout the game that is a penalty to you? Can you play anything at once and just go, cool, I have just as well of picking random as I do playing?
Yeah. And not finally, but the next criteria that we can do here is game immersion. Does the game fit the category best, or does the theme match the mechanism? It's interchangeable depending upon the topic that we're talking about. And this one being the theme matching the mechanism. As well as, does it have player interaction? Does it cause a lot of table talk? Is there a lot of communications, which is weird for this one because it's communication limits, but there is still player communication and table talk and interaction and you can still have a good time. And that leads to us to memorable moments. What are those stand-up moments that make you go, yeah, really loud and turn every head in the game room?
And then finally, the simplest of all of these, art and production. How we like the art, how well do we like the pieces, and how well does the graphic design help enhance your gameplay?
And if for some weird reason through all those criteria the game's still tied, that is why we have the fan vote that we were talking about at the top of the podcast, where they will be the top tiebreaker. You can always find these subjects on Board Game Revolution in the Facebook community and help us decide who is the best game.
Cool. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into our very first round of this. The meaning, the number 1 seed, the Crew, versus our number 8 seed, the Grizzled. The category. All right, Daniel, I'll be leading our argument today.
All right, and I have these preloaded. Hey, look, it's the.
Oh, I have to argue
Grizzled.
the Grizzled. Okay, so this is gonna be tough for me because out of all 8 of these games, first off, I absolutely love the Grizzled. I want to say that. But out of all 8 of these games, this is the least that match this mechanism. No, second least. Second least. And that's because sometimes you'll get hard knocks cards that will also prevent you from being able to discuss.
Yeah.
But essentially what you're doing is you're playing cards into a row. You can't have any 3 of the same symbol or any 3 of the same background on the cards. So if you have 3 winter or 3 bullet casings or whatever they are, or 3 gas masks, then you guys lose as a group. But the problem is any cards you don't play through that round get shuffled into the next round, and then if you don't deal with them as well as you can, you're running out of time. All you really have to do thematically is just kind of cope with the struggles of World War One. And it's a brilliant game. It's a really smart idea. I think I don't think it gets enough love anymore. I have hardly heard anybody talk about it.
You know, the thing about this is, what is it? Come on, or Simon, whatever they want to go by nowadays. They released a really nice version of the game that I really think was unnecessary.
As I point to my copy, I think this version of it is, yes, it's unnecessary, but the pieces are unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
That's what Simon does.
What's the point of the minis? I mean, I know it used to be cool minis or not, but it's a card game. You don't really need minis for. They just stand on the table to let everybody know you're playing that guy.
That's right. But the other thing is, though, it does add a bunch of campaign and it's a long mission thing. It's a multiple scenario. And that justifies it. But I agree. The minis are just there.
No, I don't disagree with you. I really do enjoy this game. I also think it's one of the least likely ones that should be on this list. I would rather have Letter Jam on this list than this, and that's saying something. I prefer the Grizzled over Letter Jam. I really think this is a phenomenal game to be played, and everybody needs to play it once. There's another thing that really can knock it slightly, and that's, again, you mentioned it, World War One. It's a very dark subject matter. You're dealing with World War One and what it does to a person. So when you're getting, I forget what they're called, like traumas or something like that, you can't talk you can't, Hard knocks, yeah.
Hard knocks.
Yeah, and that's a very dark subject matter for some people, as well as there's a dark story behind the art too.
Yeah, which I mean, if you know about it, you know about it, but
if you want to hear about it, just look it up. It's not that hard to find. It's I don't want to talk about it. We're trying to be a family friendly podcast here, but it's a dark story that can turn some people off. Other than that, it's a very, very good game. But I mean, when you're comparing this to the Crew, which again, I mentioned it at the top when we're talking about like the trick taking possibilities about it, which most trick taking games do limit communication. You can't tell people what's in your hand. I just think mechanistically it works with what we're going here when it comes to games matching mechanisms better than the Grizzled, and not by much though. But what I do like about it in the pros for the Crew, for me, is it spins a category or a type of game that you've never expect and makes it a co-op that's been thoroughly competitive for how long trick taking games have been out, and made this a competitive game. And there is very limited communication with your partners. You have one way to really communicate what's in your hand the entire round of a game, and that is I put a card on the table and I say, if I put it above, this is the highest card I have in that set. If I put it the marker on the lowest part, that means this is the lowest card I have of that number or that color. Or I put it in the middle, this is the only card I have of that. But you can only use that once per game. I think that's a really, really nice thing to do for a game like this. And I have a great time with it. But you also got to look at the fact that it's more mechanistic rather than thematic, to the point where they made a whole different game of this, and one's in space and one's underwater. So
yeah, it's one. I actually would say like the Grizzled, I feel is much more thematic. It doesn't match the mechanism. The theme doesn't match the mechanism, but it is more of a thematic game compared to the Crew. Not
yeah,
overly thematic, but there's like you don't feel overjoyed when you're playing the Grizzled, and that's on purpose.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not
yeah.
supposed to.
Again, it's a dark subject matter, and they're what's the word I'm looking for here? They're doing it justice. You don't want to make a joke about war or what people went through in World War One and such. So you make a good thematic game to it. However, it's not something that could get to the table because of the subject matter.
Right, exactly. So between them, which do you think should move on?
I would have to say the Crew.
The Crew? I would say just based on the communication limits alone, yes. But yeah, the Crew is a phenomenal game. I don't disagree with you. I think it needs to move on.
Yeah.
Number one, Crew. All right, that's our first round. Our next round will be Codenames versus Shadows over Camelot. And I did check into it. So the game was nominated in 2015 for the Spiel des Jahres, and it went up against Machi Koro and Colt Express. Colt Express was the winner
First
that
one
year.
that year. Yeah.
Yep. And Daniel, I'll be leading off this argument as well.
Hey, look which one else you get. Oh, I ripped it.
Okay, you got mad apparently. Shadows over Camelot. Okay, so Shadows over Camelot is one of the games that puts not only Days of Wonder on the map. I mean, granted, Ticket to Ride was the big one on that, but it was well known before that for Shadows over Camelot.
Yeah.
Shadows over Camelot was a beautiful production. It's essentially a card game. It's one of the best productions for being a card game. All of these things that people strive to do now and like making their games grandiose and gorgeous, I think owe a lot to Days of Wonder for making a game something as simple as Shadows over Camelot into something that beautiful. With that being said, as well, Shadows over Camelot is also one of the first games that have a hidden traitor.
Yeah.
You don't know who's working against the group. You don't know who's trying to mess things up by going to them. And because of that communication limitation, is that it works well for that basis, but because you're trying to keep your stuff secret, and that now that I'm thinking about it, limited communication, Dead of Winter is very similar to that fact, which is also
Yeah.
a very hidden traitor style of game. It could be that nobody's a traitor, or you could play with definitely one player working against the group. But then at the same time, with it being just a simple card game, I don't know if it's justified in that. It's really neat. It's like 6 different mini games is what you
Yeah,
go in.
it's really good for what it is. Bruno Cathala, honestly, one of his earlier games, really, really good.
Yeah.
But honestly, it can be really long. It could take a long time, and some people who want to play a quick game, this is not for you. As well as
No.
it's very analysis paralysis prone. Because you're trying to, especially if you're the betrayer, you're trying to figure out when's the best time I'm going to do something. How am I going to do something? I'm going to play this mini game, but if I do this, oh wait, I can put catapults up, but it's bad if we get a catapult because so many of those could lose the game. When do I make my choice to put a catapult up? That kind of thing. And so it lends itself really to AP, whereas Codenames is actually decently a quick game.
it. I'm gonna stop you right there. More often than not, Codenames is a brain burner for whoever's figuring out the clues. That's a
Yes, but I
long.
could play this a lot quicker than Shadows over Camelot. I played a full contingent
I
Shadow
agree.
over Camelot. It took 3 hours.
Yep, I agree. I agree. I'm just saying it's not by any means a fast game compared to a lot of the ones on the list.
Yeah, but out of these two, it's the faster game. Another thing going for Codenames, and again, it's not really going into the expansion category, really, because it's just you have a version for anybody. There's a Disney version, a Marvel version, a Harry Potter version, a Simpsons version. Pick what you want to play and play it. You can play the original version, which is the one we're arguing here, and I think the most boring version out of everything because it's just letters and you're just pointing it out. And the art is but you try to rely on what your teammate is giving you. They can only give you one number and one letter clues. So if I'm playing the Disney version, I can say, how does this mouse 2 or rodent 2? That would be a better clue because you can't really say their name, Minnie and Mickey Mouse, but I could say rodent 2 and they'd be like, okay, it's these two.
Yep.
It does a lot of things really, really well. And I really do enjoy it, especially when it comes to that limited communication. It gives you can't only give one number in one word, I guess you could say. It's really good. Have a good time with it. It can hold a good amount of people on it. Honestly, if you're playing in teams, you got one clue giver and 4 other people. I wouldn't recommend that, to be truthfully honest. At best, I think Codenames, even though people say it's a party game, it's best at 4. One person giving the clues and one person answering the clues. Maybe 6, where you have 2 on one side, 2 trying to figure out what the clues are, and one person giving the clues. But other than that, I would not want to play this with a lot of players.
No. Yeah, I don't blame you. It makes it too easy, but then it makes it, but also counterbalances it because then there's a lot of people with other hidden references like, wait, maybe this, and then too many cooks scenario,
Yeah. All right.
So between
Who do you think should move on?
personally, I think Codenames just on the basis of the mechanism alone, communication
Yeah.
limitations, definitely does it. Shadows of Camelot has to do it.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think Codenames should go on. As much as I really like Shadows over Camelot when I played it, it's just not something I've played that that recent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. So Codenames moves on. Our number 2 seed. No surprises there yet.
Nope, we haven't got any surprises, but this next one is going to be fun.
This one's gonna hurt. These are two of some of my favorite games. That's Decrypto versus Hanabi. And Daniel, you will be starting this round.
Oh, joy. We both know which game I'm getting.
Probably the one you like least.
And the thing is, I don't like any of these least. It's just there's one game I told you about gives me the chills, and guess which one I got?
Hanabi. Yep.
So Hanabi is the one I was talking about earlier, where there was a running gag at the game shop that if anybody ever said Hanabi, it gives me the chills, and that's because we talked about it. This game is stressful. You don't know what's in your hand, and so your teammates have to communicate with you of what fireworks you have or what color you have, as well as what number you have, but they only have a limited amount of time to do it because it's 3 or 4 tokens you have that you can communicate with.
No, you have 8 total, but those go out really fast.
Yeah, and so all they could tell me, these 3 are blue. Okay, these are my blue, so I got to put them over here and hold them differently in my hand. Again, I can't see what they are. And then the next clue given to me is this one and this one and this one are ones. Okay, well, I know I got to play this first because ones, you got to play them in ascending order, 1 through, 5 or 6? The communication limits in this game is unbelievable. It is so stressful, but in a good way. It's a good stress. It's very fun. It's actually a very well-produced game for such a small box, too. Very colorful, to the point where someone like me can see the reds and the greens in this one. I think that's a great job on that aspect, especially for a game as old as this is. Again, it's easy to teach and easy to learn, but very difficult to master. This is probably one of the most difficult games on this list to master because you got to figure out the best way to give clues and the best way to put it out there without it blowing up in your face, basically, because you have a timer on that aspect as well. And the fuse, every time you get something wrong, the fuse is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and it's going to blow up in your face. It is so good, but oh, so stressful.
This game, this is the least arbitrary choice out of all of the games, easily, because it is so tense on how you have to play the
yes
cards.
and no, because eventually you got to play a card, and if it's one you just don't know, you got to play it.
Yeah, but that's so. But you can even account for that, and that's how I play. Is I keep track of which ones I've had in my hand the longest. So if I know I need to discard a card out of my 4 cards, then the one that has given me the most opportunities for somebody to say something about it is the one that's going away. Which means that, like, if it's been in my hand for like 5 rounds, and then I just got one that I just drew right now, I'm not going to discard the one I drew because nobody's had the opportunity to tell me about it yet. Whereas the other one, 5 rounds later, it must be worthless at that point. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like that. Even that, there's never a where it's arbitrary. Like, 'cause you always have that. So I don't know. It's phenomenal. It's the reason it's a Spiel winner. Decrypto, though, is one of the funnest games that I've ever played. And it's one of the funnest games that make no sense the first round you play it.
Yeah, I'll give you that, yeah.
It doesn't make a lick of sense until you're halfway through the game. It almost guarantees that the first time you play it, you're playing it twice. Because the first couple rounds, you have to play a couple rounds for it to start to make sense. Because when you describe it to somebody, it's technically it's a really subtle communication limitation, because only the 4 words that I'm trying to clue my teammate on that's visible for everybody on my team. There's no limitation there, but I have to give an audible clue where the other team can hear it because they're intercepting our message 100%. So the question is that how do I communicate to my team something that is very clear to it versus something that we know that the other team is going to hear and they will have no clue? I think that's brilliant, the way that they incorporated that. It's going to be a hard choice between these two for me.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I like one more than the other, but taking my bias out of it. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy Hanabi. As you can see, it's on my wall right above my shoulder over here. Mm-hmm. So yep. I enjoy both of these games.
Yeah, they've always gone over really well in our groups. Like, it's just, I don't know what it is. They just go over really well every time. So I think we need to break this down.
I agree. I was going to say that's probably going to be our first breakdown. I have to say Ease of Play goes to Hanabi.
Yes. Agreed. It's not that Decrypto is difficult. It's just it's a weird learning curve.
There's a whole nother layer to it that for learning. So, like, if you want to talk about gateway games or introduction games, however Dice Tower wants to talk about it nowadays, Hanabi is that gateway game, and then Decrypto is just right above it, just because there's a slight learning curve with that one.
Yeah. Replay value, I would give to Decrypto.
Yeah, I agree with you, because there's 1 or 2 expansions? There's one for sure.
But the game comes with like 80 cards, and each card has 4 words on it, and you only use 4 words on your team.
Honestly, I also have to say Armed Production goes to Decrypto.
I really like the art on it. However, there was one version of Hanabi, and I don't know what it was, but most cards have like this plastic coating on it, or like in Bicycle, it's the air cushion finish, it's the texture and stuff. The plastic coatings on my copy of Hanabi flaked off, and so I had it was almost like glitter inside of the game, for the longest time. It was really strange, and I don't know why. But yeah, on that basis alone, I'm giving it to Decrypto.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Decrypto gets it.
Yeah. Replay
So
value to Decrypto, turn production to Decrypto,
ease of play to
ease of play
Hanabi's.
Hanabi. Meaningful choice.
Honestly, I'd have to give this one to Hanabi. Now, there's a lot of meaningful choices in Decrypto, but you have to be careful how you do things in this because you have a limited amount of clues to give, and now you can get them back if you do things properly eventually. But again, you only have 8. If you're wasting them, they're not going to do you any good. And you also have a limited time of putting out the right cards because the fuse is getting shorter as you go. So just for that, you have to make a lot more meaningful choices with your game of Hanabi than you do with Decrypto.
Okay, I can agree with that. Cool. So then now it comes down to
Game immersion.
Game immersion. Which one has more? How well does that theme match the mechanism? That would probably have to go to Hanabi.
Yeah, I'd have to give that to Hanabi. I agree with you on that.
Because you're limited in what you can say and you're limited in what you can know.
Yeah, and the only limitation with Decrypto is how vague you want to make a clue.
Yeah.
Because the other team can intercept it.
But which one has more stand-up moments? I would say probably Decrypto.
Yeah. Decrypto. I can even bring the reference of which one. Other than the fact that Hanabi just fills me full of stress, which is not really a good memorable moment. For me, Decrypto is when we were playing with our mutual friend of ours. And when we played it, I gave you the clue Muppet just to clue you into the word pig. And you're like, oh, I know which one this is.
Yep. Yeah. You wouldn't think of everyone's thinking Kermit, they're thinking Green, they're thinking Fuzzy, they're thinking Jim Henson for some reason. Yeah. Never would you know pig. That's a brilliant clue. And then which means I think player interaction is definitely Decrypto.
Decrypto. Which means Decrypto moves on.
Absolutely. All right, good job.
Which looks like Decrypto will go on against Codenames.
That it will. Very, very similar words or games.
Yeah.
Now, these are easily the two most similar games between the two. That's Mysterium and Just One.
And what's funny about these is the Decrypto and Hanabi was tough for you. This is my tough bracket because these games go down gangbusters.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be you starting off.
And I get Mysterium.
Of course you do.
Oh, this is tough. This is really, really tough for me because I really enjoy both of these games. They both do very similar in a way. I think when we're going to like theme matching the mechanism for Just One, I think it works a little bit better in Just One because only one person has communication limits in Mysterium, where it's the ghost. He's just handing out cards, or they're only handing out cards. Whereas Just One is the group cannot talk about what they're clue giving to the person who has to guess. And if there's matching clues, they get eliminated. And so I think when we're talking about matching the mechanism, this one fits it a lot better than Mysterium because there's more people in communication limits rather than just one. Because in Mysterium, we can help each other. The ghost just can only give us clues through the cards that he has or they have in their hands. And so for that right there, I think the communication limit on the mechanism works better for Just One. Also, Just One is a simple game to teach and learn. It's very simple. Very decent production, but if we're going to go production value, Mysterium wins that part of it. Does lead to a lot of fun table talk where it's like, really, you had those clues and you couldn't guess what it was Frankenstein? Come on, man. And it plays quickly, even with a full player count. I have to say, I played this with 7 people, and it plays a lot faster than Mysterium. A lot faster.
Yeah.
And there is an expansion. Yeah, and there is an expansion out there, but it's in German right now.
Which doesn't help us. Yeah, no, if we were to break it down, obviously, I can tell you're still leaning towards Just One, obviously. But yeah, Just One, it definitely does have, ease of play. That's the biggest one that I think It has easily, without argument. The other four, though, I'm not certain that the other four can compare, and I'll explain why. Art and production,
Oh,
I know, obviously, Mysterium wins it.
Mysterium,
Uh,
hands down. Don't get me wrong, the
the
stuff that comes in just one is nice, but Mysterium just blows it
yeah,
out of the water with art alone.
yeah, the the yeah, the art alone is just, and the production is gorgeous. The problem that I have is like meaningful choices with just one. I do agree with you, like the most meaningful choice is when you're determining what word you are and what level of obscurity that you
Mhm.
think you can get away with, nobody else will, that the player guessing will get. But what ruins it for me for just one, and I love it when this happens, but why I don't think it's as meaningful of a choice as Mysterium is when, let's say you're playing a four-player game of just one, and Daniel, you're the one who's guessing, and all three of us come up with the same word, and we all flip our things down and say, "Okay, well that's a
You
moot
know,
round."
I've never had that happen in a 4-player game.
Seen it many times, and I love it when it happens. It's amazingly hilarious, right? But at the same time, like you all get that chuckle. You're like, that's hilarious. We just lost, and that was funny."
So the
But
thing is, I
it
agree with
ruins
you. I
one
would
part of the
give meaningful choices to Mysterium. There's not a lot because it's based on the card draw, really, from the Ghost and how he uses
yeah.
his Ravens. But I mean, there is a lot more meaningful choices because there's a lot of discussion involved. Okay, he could be using this, they could be using that. But I'll give you meaningful choices.
Yeah. But then the other ones though, replay value. You know,
Well, when we're
there
talking
is
about
one.
length of time and scaling well, that one goes to just one. There is expansion, so the expansion goes to Mysterium. So we're down
Yep.
to the other criteria. So
Yes.
which would be
Which
what was it?
is fail
Uh,
minimum number of plays for full experience.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, there's a lot of words. There's a lot of words in just one, but that's a very different experience than the cards on
Mhm.
top of which suspects and things.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
a lot
there's
of variability on Mysterium. I'll give you that.
yeah, which I think that means Mysterium gets it, doesn't it?
So if we're giving it game immersion, replay value,
And
and
production.
meaningful art production and meaningful choice. No. We didn't give a game immersion. We gave just one, or did we?
No, we hadn't talked about game immersion yet.
Yeah, that would give it its third one though if it got. So yeah,
Yeah.
Mysterium moves on.
Okay.
And like I
Yeah, I
said, this
was
is hard for me. I really do love Mysterium, but I think it's the nostalgia, or not the nostalgia, but just what Just One did for me during lockdown. It was our go-to game to play over Zoom, so I just have that uh, love with it.
yeah. Yeah, no, I do absolutely. And you and me are both taking our bias out of it. Like I do think Just One is a funner game than Mysterium. I do truly believe that, and I agree with you 100%. It's just as far as communication limitation,
Yeah,
Mysterium it really puts up a
no.
strong.
If it comes to just communication limitation, Just One does it better than Mysterium. It's everything else that it lost to. Just because, again, going back to my argument, it's one person that has the communication limit. Whether it's so, if we're saying a 7-player game, 6 players don't have that limitation. If we're playing just one, 6 players have a limitation. One player doesn't even know what their word is. So
But
all
that's also
7 players
tricky.
have limitations.
But that's also really tricky too, because not only are they trying to elude, they're trying to give you this like surreal concept of how do I portray communication through this image, which
No,
is
no,
deeply thematic.
it does. I just think just one does the game or the communication limit better because everybody has some form of limitation. Mysterium, your limitation is really just up to your imagination what the guy's trying to tell you with the card.
True. Okay. Okay. Now that you've clarified it, that actually makes a lot of sense. All right, cool. Our next round into the semifinals, we have the Crew versus Mysterium.
And we have code names going up against the crypto. But before we move on, let's find out how everything else went. So the Grizzled, which was our 8th seed, was also our 8th vote getter with only 1 vote, which makes me a little sad, but again, I understand.
Yeah.
Our number 7 seed, Shadows over Camelot, was also our number 7 vote getter, and it only had 5. Following that up with our number 4 seed, which was our 5th best vote getter, just 1 with 12. And finally, with our number 4 vote getter, which was our number 6 seed, Hanabi with 16.
Mm-hmm. All right, so off into the semifinals. We have the Crew versus Mysterium. Which one will win? Daniel, you'll be starting this off today.
All right, let's put them in here. Shake it up. And they're stuck together. I get to argue Mysterium.
Off to it.
All right. So everything we just said about Mysterium still applies. I think Crew does the communication limitation better because only, again, one person is limited in Mysterium, whereas everybody else has some sort of limitation because we can't tell you what's in our hand except for that one little clue we can give once per game. Other than that, I think if I'm looking at this, the Crew wins ease of play, but art and production, again, hands down, Mysterium is one of the best produced games out there. It is phenomenal art. It has somewhat decent components. The player pieces are amazing. The little crystal ball things you got, plus the player pouches that you get with it. Once you get your location and your bad guy and your weapon, you get to put them in your pouch and just wait till everybody else gets theirs. I think once talking about those two, yeah, that's the easiest. Replay value goes to Mysterium as well, in my opinion. But when it gets down to the meaningful choice and the game immersion itself, that's where it gets a little difficult for me because I've had better memories and stand-up moments in Mysterium, but I think Crew is a phenomenal game and how you got to make your choices in the game, especially when you get deeper into the campaign per se, because you have to be smart of how you're giving these tricks and the way they go, because this person's got to do it this way. This person can't take a trick. This person has to take all the tricks, however the limitation is on that. And trying to communicate to everybody in that game how this is going to work is a great job. But this is a tough one for me, in all honesty.
Yeah, I agree with the ones that you've already given out. I would give the Crew meaningful choice, and that's because of the surreal, ambiguous nature of Mysterium. You could take a shot in the dark and have a good chance.
Yeah, it does lend itself just slightly to more arbitrary choices.
Yeah. However, now specifically when we talk about mechanisms, how well does the theme match the mechanism? This goes back to me saying I think Mysterium is easily the most thematic game out of all of these, because the theme of the game is you are conducting a seance, and the ghost player is giving you visions that don't make sense at first, but by talking through the visions, they're trying to allude to who the person was. I think that's incredibly thematic. As a big fan of the people who would do like the fake seances and performing the magicians and stuff like that, I love that theme. It's amazing. Now in the stand-up moments, so here's the catch with it. I don't think either of them have stand-up moments, because the end of Mysterium is your stand-up moment. If you get to that one last choice where you all have to, as a group, try and figure out the one win, the stand-up moment is whether you win or not. Whereas in the Crew, the only thing that there's a point in a lot of different rounds where once the objectives have been complete, that might null a couple of tricks. It's like, well, like we've completed this and now we don't have to play the rest of the round. And I feel that takes me out of it personally. I love it still, but it's like, and that mainly happens mainly at the first rounds, right?
First rounds, yeah.
You need to take the first trick. Okay, well, I took it. Okay, we're done. That was easy. Like okay, cool. But that's my counter argument to that. But whereas which one has more player interaction? I gotta say Mysterium. I really
Yeah,
think
no, I
that.
don't disagree with you on that. It's like I said, it's very tough. I think when we're going to like memorable moments, the player interaction is the big thing. There's a
Mhm.
lot of table talk at the table. The only person who can't talk is the person playing the ghost. Everybody else is like, oh, he
Yeah.
gave you this. I think it points to this because that she's a nun, and this is all biblical or crosses and black and white and that kind of thing.
But they're still taking it in too. Like
Yeah,
they're interacting in their own way. They're using that as a feedback loop and giving back.
yeah. How to give the next clues if they need to, or how the players are interpreting the cards that are coming in. Are they interpreting based on the symbology or the colors and stuff like that? Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Honestly, I agree with you. I think game immersion should go to Mysterium. Therefore, Mysterium moving on.
Okay, Mysterium moves on. Who knew that it would do that?
I think again
But
with the
it really,
crew, it's just because mechanistic or wise, it's doing what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to have limited communication because of trick taking. The way Mysterium does it is different.
yeah, because it has that extra layer. It's a multi-layered cake. It really
Yeah,
is.
it really is.
Cool. So our next round is Codenames versus Decrypto. And Daniel, once again, you'll be starting us off this one.
Tails never fails. I'm telling you.
It's yeah, it was all heads until you started taking away with it.
Decrypto.
Decrypto, go for it.
All right, what can we say about Decrypto that hasn't already been said? That's the thing about when we do the semifinals. I get Codenames as a Spiel des Jahres winner. I really do, and it's a great game in its own right. But if I had to choose between these two, I'd choose Decrypto hands down. I just like what Decrypto does when it comes to teams. We both know the information. The only thing is when it's my turn, I know which cards I'm supposed or what letters I'm supposed to point you to. And what's interesting about that is I have to give the right clues without someone else intercepting it. And I know Codenames kind of does that, like people can steal if they want to. I just again the stand-up moments from when I prefer playing Decrypto over Codenames because they do something similar. I just like Decrypto more because of the stand-up moments I've had playing it. The giving you the clue Muppet and you zeroing in when I'm trying to tell you, and then our opponents are like, Muppet? What the hell? What? Who would give that clue? And I'm like, we've talked about this before about us. Like, I'm a huge Muppet fan. I enjoy all the Muppet movies, and you and me have talked about it. And you're like, okay, I know where he's going with this one. And when I get down to it, ease of play,
It would go to Codenames.
code names, yeah.
They're
Art
both
production, Decrypto, because those screen things are just amazing. The like infrared screens. I think
yeah.
those are one of the coolest things in a board game and just in a party game in general.
Although I don't know, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but because you and I are slightly differently colorblind. We were both colorblind, but like it seems to affect you more.
We
Are you able to?
what's funny, we have the same colorblind too. Well, yeah, we're both neutronopes, but it's just the variation of
Yeah,
what we see.
yeah, yeah. Like I think mine is just slightly, or like yeah, certain shades get me more.
Yeah,
Can you read the cards without the filter? Because I can.
no, I somewhat, not a lot. I'm more on the green side, so red. If they scramble red, I'm lost.
Okay. Yeah, see, it's much more easy for like I can hold it up and just like read the cards like as if there was no filter on it.
Yeah,
So
no.
it's
Though I can
tricky.
see through camouflage really well.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Haha, suck it, camo. Anyway,
All
I'm
right,
gonna
so
go.
just going through our list here. Ease of play goes to code names. Arm production goes to Decrypto. Meaningful choice. Huh?
Meaningful choice is, I would say, code names, and that's because you're both playing with the same board. You not only have to account for your opponents, you have to make clues that wouldn't because if you choose if I'm giving a clue to you and you choose one of the opponents, they get the point, not us, and the turn's over. Whereas if you don't understand the clue I'm giving, that's it. You just don't understand it, and that's the point.
So I got a question for you on this one, the way we argue things with the replay value when it comes to expansions.
Mhm.
How are we going to score it? Because Decrypto actually has an expansion. You can't play it without Decrypto. Whereas Codenames has variants. It's not really an expansion, they're just variants.
Right. Yeah. So it has no expansions.
Got
There
it.
are many expansions to it. There are card packs for Codenames. So those are
Did not know
expansions.
that.
Hmm. Yep.
Because I only know the variants because that's all you ever see. I have
Yep.
not seen an expansion in the wild.
Yep. They're it's more so like a promo set, but they are like mini expansions. It includes like 20 cards that are themed around something, like other board games or tabletop day.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Game immersion.
So Decrypto.
I agree.
Because if you think about it in a way, they're both kind of the same theme. It's just different times. Like because in code names, you are secret agents trying to find the other secret agents on your team by giving each other code names. It's like, oh, what up, Beaver? It's like, what's up, Salamanca? Like, I don't know why that came to my mind. I've been watching too much Breaking Bad, but there's that. Whereas in Decrypto, you're like wiretapping and you're digitally espionage. You're spying on them and trying to decode it. I love that decoding idea.
All right.
I
So
would say
with
Decrypto.
okay, so honestly, let's just finish off replay value. So you're saying game immersion to crypto, meaningful choice, art and ease of play goes to
Codenames.
codenames, art production. So replay value, we already said expandability goes to codenames.
And you froze on my end.
Sorry about that. We had some internet connection issues, so sorry for the quick cut. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and
So let's break it down again. Each play goes to code names, right?
Yes.
Decrypto gets art and production.
Yes.
Meaningful choices code.
Yes.
Replay value goes to.
See, that's what we were
It goes
breaking
to
down.
Decrypto, doesn't it?
Yeah, because
Okay,
other than
so
the promo packs, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Decrypto.
Okay, so other than the promo, that's what it sounds like. Okay, Decrypto. Moving on. Sorry about all the technical difficulties, everybody, but that's all right.
We have a storm rolling through too, so that's part of the issue. All right, moving on. Our finals is going to be Decrypto versus Mysterium.
Who thought this was going to be the case, huh?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? All right. So how much did the votes go for Codenames and the crew?
All right. Codenames, which was our 2 seed, was actually our third best vote getter at 20. And the crew, which was our number 1 seed, and was also our number 1 vote getter at 26. So right now we have the 2 vote getter going up against the number 6 vote getter.
All right, fantastic. Let's go into it. Decrypto versus Mysterium. Now, in this final round, we put away the Cup of Doom and the Coin of Doom. They are gone because we don't just go straight into the breakdown. We're not arguing for one side. Nope, that's right. Is there any of these criteria that you feel are immediately obvious, and before you even have to say it, art and production?
Mysterium.
We know what it's doing. Mysterium. So 1 point for Mysterium. Ease of play. Oh wait, is there any others that are immediately obvious?
Between these
I
two,
would say immersion would go to Mysterium.
I have to agree with you on that one. There's a lot more table talk, a lot more interaction. Yeah.
Okay.
Another one I would have to say is replay value.
Goes to who?
I'm just trying to see here. Minimum number of plays, expendability. Yeah, honestly, I think Mysterium already wins it right out the gate.
You think? Wait, hold on. I think replay value though would go to Decrypto. there is more expansions, but the playing scaling can play 8 players, and it's
That's
not, and
true,
they're
and
just
it's honestly a full contingent of Decrypto would take a lot faster than a full contingent of Mysterium.
well, not necessarily because there's the timer. Technically, Mysterium is a 42-minute game. That's it.
Technically,
That's it. Some people ignore the timer. I'm just saying it's supposed to be a
that is
42
true.
minute game, and Decrypto is longer than that, but it has more players, and I don't think number of players makes it scale differently. I think it's going
Yeah,
to
that's
be
true.
that regardless of the number of players.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You won me over.
So, okay. Now, meaningful choice and
Let's
ease of
get meaningful choice real quick. Let's go ease of play. Which one do you think is easier to teach and easier to learn?
um. I think Mysterium is easier to play.
I think so too, because when it comes down to it, it's just discussing the pretty pictures that come up to you.
Yep, yep. It's up to interpretation, which makes it easy. But then on top of it, you're trying to find a suspect, a location, and a weapon. If anybody who's played Clue, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot of analysis paralysis because again, the timer, you're right. My
Mhm.
only gripe for Mysterium is I hate that last play. I hate that last round. The like if you get everybody gets everything and you go to that silent vote, I hate that part. Other
Yep,
than that, Mysterium is a solid game.
yep, absolutely. And then I think meaningful choice now goes to Decrypto. Now that I think about it,
Because of the last part.
because of the last part. Yep. No, because of the ambiguity of the pictures. That's what really does it.
Yeah. Again, you like you said in the beginning of it with Mysterium, you could make an arbitrary choice. You could take a shot in the dark without even looking at your thing and probably still be able to get what you're looking for. All
There you
right,
go.
so by my math, Mysterium wins 3-2.
It does. Congratulations to Mysterium. How many votes did they get?
So our number 6 vote getter was Decrypto with 8, which means Mysterium was the number 2 vote getter and only 3 points shy of the crew, which is 23. And it's a good thing we gave it an extra week because both the crew and Mysterium were tied at 23 when we were originally going to record.
All right.
There, 3
We
more
went
votes got snuck in.
obvious. Well, I mean, we had Mysterium versus the crew, and we already decided which one was better, and that's Mysterium.
Yeah, no, I
It
don't
it
disagree with
worked.
you, but if they went to a tiebreaker for some odd reason at that point in time, it would have been weird.
It would just have to be a tie. They would both win. Well, congratulations to Liberland and Mysterium for turning Dixit into an amazing game. Because that's really what
Honestly,
it
I
did.
don't hate Dixit. It's just it is what it is. Mysterium is just better at what Dixit does.
It is
Has a better theme on it too, because all Dixit really is a race about dreams, I guess you can say.
something like that. It really does sense. So we want to congratulate Mysterium for being our winner for limited communication or communication limits on Board Game Geek. And we want to thank you for tuning in to our episode of Everyday Board Games. If you ever want to join us live, with the exception of today, or hopefully
Last
not
week.
in the future, yeah, join us at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames.
As well as you can find all video re-uploads on YouTube at Everyday Board Games 2020. And if you like what you see, give us a comment down below, talk about your favorite games, as well as subscribe to us and give us a like. It really helps us grow on the platform immensely. As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, and Podbean.
And if you ever want to give us an idea for a future, or just reach out to say hi, contact us directly at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com.
As well as you can also get in contact with us on our official Twitter account at EBG Podcast. Also want to make a little change to like the YouTube and the audio podcast versions. I will be now starting to leave links in the description below to where we're getting the categories. So you can go find the games and tell us which one's your favorite is to help you out and see where we're getting all this.
Great. And then we want to thank you for tuning into our Everyday Board Games podcast. As always, I've been Daniel.
And I've been Daniel.
And this has been Everyday Board Games.
Have a good one.